Hello and welcome back for part 4 in the intermediate series. This time around I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's going to allow you to move with the blade, the idea of planes. Everything that we've dealt with to this point has been dealing principally with one plane. The clock face sort of demonstrates it. Okay, one plane. My blade is always basically doing this. Okay, there's the one plane. If I'm going counterclockwise or clockwise, I'm still working in this plane. Okay, when I start throwing in the figure eights, I'm pushing the blade behind my back, but it's still basically this plane. I'm just moving my body and manipulating the blade around it, but I'm still basically dealing with this plane like this. During one of the earlier videos, I was talking to you about footing and stance. And in that video, I covered the idea that for most of these moves, we're going in front of you and behind you with the figure eights. But the possibility exists to be able to go to your right and to your left. Now this is because of the idea of planes. Right, we've got this plane here, which is where we've been working. We've got this plane here, which is perpendicular to the other plane. And then there is a third plane as well. This one, the horizontal plane. Now, in a lot of wushu and other martial arts sort of things, the horizontal plane, these spins above the head, are called cloud spins because they're located above the head. But the horizontal plane is down here as well. The trick with it is it's difficult to work on the horizontal plane because your body is always going to be in the way. I can't just move it forward and back like I can with this plane and with this plane. Alright, so the forward plane here, this one's pretty self-explanatory, just our footing is a little bit different, and instead of going in front of and behind us, we're going to our left, to our right, to our left, to our right. And this is useful in single saber more so than it is in double, where we have to go to the sides to keep the blades away from each other. But for single saber I have the option. I can be in the front, I can be to the side. Okay, that horizontal plane. Okay, cloud spins, things like this. That throws in that hand switch. Okay, that allows us to work on the horizontal plane. Also, if we're working with saber staff, some of the neck rolls. This is a false neck roll like this. We're sort of bringing the blade across in front of us. And then there's one that actually goes over the shoulders. You can't really do it with a single saber unless your saber is ridiculously long and weighted appropriately. But with saber staff, it's possible. But these neck rolls and shoulder rolls, these things all take place on the horizontal plane. The primary thing that I wanted to cover with planes this time around was the ability of those planes to help you change direction. We spoke early on about how a downward wield on this side transitions to this side, becomes an upward wield. And that's because my body's in a different position, but the blade is still basically working within this plane. Alright, I can actually break a plane by traveling through a second plane. Alright, let me explain what that means. I can go from a downward wield over here to a downward wield over here, but I can't do it without leaving this plane, because if I'm stuck here on this downward wield and I move to this side, I find myself in that upward wield. Okay, through working with planes, I can be on this plane, move to the front plane, still in a downward wield, move to the side plane, still in a downward wield. Okay, so this allows me to get from one side of my body to the other by going through that perpendicular front plane here. Alright, the quickest yet tricky way to get from one side to the other, breaking the plane, and or traveling through another plane, is actually to use the horizontal. That move, across in front of the face, if I'm on this side, doing a downward wield, and I basically start what's like an obiani, except instead of an obiani, I'm moving into a cloud spin. Okay, so when I say start an obiani, instead of, I'm bringing the blade behind me, but instead of bringing it all the way behind me, I just bring it down to my side so that I can pull it over and over. And it allows me to move over here in a downward wheel because I went through this horizontal plane. And then if I choose to move back over here, I'm in an upward wheel. Alright, so this allows you to play around with the movement and the direction, getting from one wheel to another, and if you get good with planes, you can use them to turn corners. I suggest a good way to practice the idea of planes. Go somewhere where you're not going to hit anybody with a saber, somewhere with narrow hallways. And if you find yourself being able to bring the blade close enough to you to navigate through a narrow hallway, just figure out what happens when that hallway turns, and you end up walking and then having to turn. Alright, it's going to help you deal with that front plane and the side plane. The horizontal plane, you're going to have to consciously try to do that. I would suggest just start off with some basic back and forth in the horizontal. Try to bring it down a bit. And you'll notice that that clock face that we were doing before, we can actually do that on the horizontal. The problem is my body trunk. I have to be able to bend down so I don't cut my head off. So in the horizontal plane, I can do this, pass behind the back, okay, and I'm still in that horizontal plane. As long as I can get my body out of the way, I can do it. So play around with the horizontal plane, realize that it's there, realize that you've got the ability to use it overhead. You can actually use it to a limited extent down low with your legs, if you want to get some tricky stuff in there. But the best use that I've found for it is as a transitional plane from one side to the other, and that's basically what I showed you. Into the cloud spin, into the downward wheel. If I wanted to do this again, cloud spin, downward wheel. Alright, I can do this with an upward wheel as well. It's a little bit trickier. It involves moving my legs out of the way a little bit, but it's basically, I'm using that modified obiani. So the standard upward obiani requires this. Instead of that, I'm doing it here to my side, moving into a horizontal. It's basically like pulling that point out from behind your back so that it's beside you. See, I don't let the point go behind my back. I still do the basic obiani motion, work it into a cloud spin, and then downward wheel on the other side. Okay. I don't let the blade go behind my back. I still use the downward motion, and then I find myself in the horizontal plane, and I use that to change to the other side. Alright, so that's the three planes. You can do these moves on the three planes if you can figure out how to move them around your body, and you can transition from one to the other. Play around with that. It's an intermediate skill. Move with it, transition with it. I'll see you next time for another lesson, and until then, I'll see you on the forums.